Welcome, mortals. What did the ancients know that we're still trying to figure out? This week, the Parallax Podcast connects the dots between the bizarre 1990s Oakville Blobs, a biological puzzle that literally fell from the sky, and the countless tales from history and religion of extraordinary, often divine or ominous, objects raining down upon humanity. From alien goo to angelic descent, get ready for a heavenly and sometimes gross investigation.
Hi, Willow.
Hi, Karisa. It's been so long since I've seen you. Oh my gosh. It's literally been like 2 minutes.
You're funny. Although, when this comes out, we will not be seeing each other. You'll be far, far away.
Far, far away.
You'll be way over the pond on the opposite side.
On the opposite side of the pond, I'll be a full day ahead of you. Isn't that wild?
It's
Ew.
so weird.
A day ahead of you, and whenever it's daytime here, it is nighttime where I will be. And when it's nighttime here, it will be daytime where I will be.
Is that how that works? It's like a reverse thing?
Mm-hmm. Ew. Ew.
No, like you're like, when it's daytime here, it's nighttime there. But then when it's nighttime there, it's daytime there. I was like, so it's a reverse? Like it happens the same time? Like that? You flip it?
You know what, Karisa? Okay, this is hour 2 of recording after a full day's work.
All right, listeners, we have got something more, or not necessarily a crime today.
Yeah, but still interesting.
It's a crime against humanity, essentially.
It is. If I woke up like these people in Oakville, I almost was like, not Oakville, but if I woke up like these people did in Oakville and saw blobs all over my lawn, I would think it's a crime.
Yes, or I'd be like, what kind of prank is this?
What is this?
If we've resorted from blobs in our yard and not TPing, what the heck?
I don't understand.
All right, so Willow's going to give us the basic strangeness of the Oakville Blobs. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about, time and place. We're going to get through the whole basics part of it. We're going to kind of lightly talk about what they tested and found in these things. Then we're going to dive into the theories. And then I'm going to add a little bit of religious and mythological theories that also could be tied to this from the past. Womp, womp, womp. Take it away.
All right. So this starts, like I said, in Oakville. This is in Washington. Oakville is not a large town. In the 1990s, this happened in 1994. So in that time, it had a population of only a few hundred people. It sits near forest land, wetlands, and coastal weather systems often bring lots of rain and mist into that area. I did read that it rains like 260 some odd days out of the year.
That's why the vampires live there. Duh.
Exactly. I know.
Why the Collins stay there.
They're hiding a lot in Oakville, Washington. So rain in general, what I'm getting at, is not uncommon. It is very moist in that area, shall we say. Karissa. You guys can't see it, but she just gave me the face.
You said moist.
I said that for you.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Right when you put your food in your mouth, too. So, again, rain is not abnormal for the residents of Oakville. But what they saw on the morning of August 7th, 1994 was not rain. No, very specifically, that this began at 3 a.m. because there was Officer Lacey, who was on ride-alongs or whatever at 3 in the morning, and it started raining, and so he turned on his windshield wipers, as one does, and noticed that instead of clearing the rain, we're just smearing this substance across his windshield. So he got out of the car so he could take a look at them and see if it was one of those situations where he just needed to replace the windshield wipers. But the first thing he noticed was that these drops were very heavy, and that was weird. And then he went to his windshield and he noticed that these drops weren't water. They were a gelatinous blob. And so he did what any good curious person would do and collected a sample and then got back in his car and kept on going. So that's how we know that these blobs began to fall at 3 in the morning. Everybody else, however, just woke up in the morning and saw blobs everywhere, all over their cars, their lawns, their houses, everywhere. And they varied in size. Apparently there were some that were really small, like little grains of rice, but there were others that were like big old blobs. Literally just gross, clear to milky white, gelatinous blobs that were all over the place. Now, there was also a resident named Beverly Roberts who, when she was looking at this gelatinous substance, she found one that was close by a raven and a frog, and they were both dead just lying next to this gelatinous substance, which I feel like should have been an omen, but I digress. So this Officer Lacey, not a few hours, I think it was a little bit longer than that, maybe like 4 to 6 hours after he had put on his gloves to collect a sample of these blobs, developed these weird symptoms. He developed severe vertigo, fever, and nausea. And he was the first of many residents to see these blobs and become sickly. Another resident named Dottie Hearn came outside of her house to find these blobs all over the place. And she had a lot of land, and she sees these blobs all over the place. And she does what every other curious human would do, and she poked the blobs, because I dare you to walk by Jell-O or literally anything else weird and not want to poke it.
We know that with the slime era. Kids love slime.
I feel like that is very much like an innate human thing to do, is to see a blob and just poke it. Be like, how jiggly is this? So that's what she did. She's like investigating these blobs. I believe, yes, I see in my notes here, she also took some samples and brought them into the house. I think she put most of them in her freezer, in her fridge. I don't really know what the idea was there, but she took samples and she put them in her freezer, in her fridge. And then she started to fall sick, and she was kind of doing that same, like she was getting that headache, that vertigo. And so she ended up calling her daughter, Sunny Barclift, and basically letting her know that she's going to need some help around the house because she wasn't feeling good. So Sunny came over, and her mom got up and fell right back onto the floor. And so Sunny literally had to carry her mother to the car because she couldn't even stand up straight to take her to the hospital. And she realized when she got there that there were a lot of people in this hospital, and they were all there for the nausea, the fever, the headache, the vertigo, and respiratory problems. They were all experiencing the exact same thing. After she got her mom set up at the hospital, she went to her mom's house to kind of see what in the world was going on, because she had seen the blobs but hadn't really done much to like investigate them yet. So she starts investigating further, and she started noticing that some of the animals were starting to become kind of sick as well. There was even some of the stray cats that her mom would feed that died from ingesting these blobs. So her mom Dottie, she ended up being hospitalized for several days to a few weeks while she was getting over whatever this was that was happening to her. Dr. David Little, who examined Dottie Hearn, stated that at first he thought that she just had a severe ear infection or Meniere's disease. And he thought, oh, everybody else has Meniere's disease, which is essentially just a really bad inner ear infection that affects your balance and gives you that vertigo.
Nope. The problem is everybody's so touchy. We can't keep our hands off nothing. Everybody's got to just touch it.
Does it squish? Got to touch the slime. How squishy is it? Does it jiggle?
It's like what is it? It's like the Bug's Life, maybe, where it's like, stay away from the light. It's like, I can't help it. You know it's going to do something to you. You know you're going to get zapped, but it's like you can't help it.
You got to. That's why I said I feel like it's a innate human thing. If you see something that looks weird, you got to touch it. And but Sunny, Dottie's daughter, was like, how are so many people getting Meniere's disease? And with Meniere's disease, you don't get a fever. Why does everybody have a fever? So she immediately was like, this doesn't make any sense. So after seeing how many more animals at the farm were being affected and how many more people were going to the hospital, and the fact that the blobs rained down 6 more times throughout the month of August, Sunny was like, something's up. Something's wrong with these blobs. And so she bugged Dr. Little over and over and over, and he finally agreed to test a sample of the blob. And he just looked at it under the microscope to see if he could figure out what was in there. Floating in the goop was, surprisingly, a human white blood cell, or leukocyte. They don't just exist out in the in the atmosphere.
You're just not floating around being like, hey, look at me.
Yeah, your white blood cells aren't just like do floating about in the air. That's not what makes up our atmosphere. And so when he saw that, the first thing that came to mind is, okay, how did this white blood cell get here? The cells too were alive, and his thought was, why is this white blood cell alive? It shouldn't be in this blob for as long as it appears. With that, he had the thought that perhaps the blob was a matrix, and that's why the white blood cell was still alive. And a matrix is like if you get something cultured and they'll rub the little Q-tip in the culture, and it's in that little, it's usually kind of this red or orange substance, and that's a matrix. It's just a whole bunch of stuff that bacteria like love to eat. So there's that. That's what his thoughts were. And then he refused to test it any further because he still did not believe that the blobs were causing the health issues. Sunny, like everybody else, was like, yes, these blobs are causing the health issues. There is something wrong. So she called the health department and talked to John Kobayashi, who is an epidemiologist. And he ended up telling her to send in samples so that they could test them and see what was wrong with the blobs. Dr. Mike McDowell was the one who received the samples at the health department lab. So he, given that he worked for an epidemiologist, was then looking for bacteria. So he tried to culture it, and he was able to grow Pseudomonas fluorescens, which you usually find this bacteria in soil, water, and the surface of plants and animals, and Enterobacter cloacae, which is usually found in the human GI tract, which is another weird thing to find outside of the body. Now, the Pseudomonas, these blobs are found, people are grabbing them from the ground, they're grabbing them from different surfaces and such. So that's not as weird. That could just be contaminant from wherever these blobs are found. But the Enterobacter cloacae is usually found in the human GI tract. So it's not really something that we would expect to find.
You could also find it in animal tracts, not just humans.
And so that was one where I was like, it's a little bit weird, but at the same time, again, depending on where they're collecting these samples, those two bacteria could possibly just be contaminant.
But there also could have been like human waste on the ground. Or not human, animal waste on the ground.
I was like, oh, the people are walking outside and pooping in their yards.
There are some people that do that.
They're like, I don't know what the Oakville people are doing. Maybe they like to poop in the grass.
Maybe Jacob was up there in his wolf form. Transitioning from human to...
When he's in wolf form, he poops human poops, not wolf poops.
Well, technically, he's a shapeshifter, so...
I guess. So technically, his GI is still a human GI tract. The bacteria does not shift with him.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of cells the Yinagalushi keep on their bodies.
They're just out there just rolling on the ground. Come find these cells. Goodness. So anywho, so he was able to go ahead and get these two bacteria, which he had a thought about it, and we're going to talk about those theories in a little bit. But the next morning, he came into the lab super early so that he could continue to look more into the blobs and kind of see what he could see, but his sample was gone. And he looked all over the lab trying to figure out what happened to the sample, because it was the first time in his very, very long career that he had ever lost a sample at the lab. So then he goes to his supervisor and is like, yo, where's my sample? What happened to my sample?
Yo, bro, what's up? Where's my jelly?
Where'd my jelly go? That jelly was messing with? Where's it at?
I'm looking for my jelly. Someone messed with my jelly sandwich in the fridge?
Who touched my jelly? Who poked it?
I don't know.
However, the supervisor said, do not ask. We're going to talk about why he said that in a little bit. But why did he say do not ask? And of course, McDowell had the same thoughts that we're going to have here in a little minute there. But the next person who received samples was Mike Osweiler. And he found in these samples kind of the same thing, multiple different cells from multiple different animals, including more leukocytes. However, he did notice too in some of the leukocytes that he saw that they did not have a nucleus. And leukocytes typically do have nuclei unless if there's a mutation, or I know with red blood cells, how they appear in the microscope changes depending on if they are like new, like being made, or if there's something like anemia, for example, then the bone marrow will send out red blood cells that aren't finished, so to speak, or aren't properly developed. I don't think that's the case with white blood cells. I think with the leukocytes, if they don't have a nucleus, as far as I know, that's a mutation. That just doesn't happen. But
you know who we should have asked? Captain Dylan.
Oh, we should have asked Captain Dylan. When he hears this, I expect Captain Dylan to send me a text and tell me if he knows why white blood cells don't have nuclei. Okay, Captain Dylan.
Thank you. Thanks for writing into the podcast.
Thanks. Anywho, other than that, though, he couldn't really determine more about the cells or exactly what these cells were from the different animals or what animals they came from, because he dealt with hazardous waste and he was not a true biologist or microbiologist to be able to do anything more than say that's a human white blood cell or that is an animal cell, and that was kind of as far as
he wasn't he an ecologist? He was like an environmentalist.
Yes, he dealt with, and I think it was Dottie, Sonny's mom, who sent those samples to him, because after she got out of the hospital, for about a year afterwards, they weren't getting any answers. And so then both her and Sonny were sending out samples to whoever they could to try to figure out what these blobs were. Now, Tim Davis was another microbiologist who got samples from Sonny's mother. But again, he was still able to see the same cells and such. But again, he wasn't really able to determine anything new. Like, he was just finding and confirming the same findings and information from the other specialists who had seen these samples.
Now, in your research, did you find, like, with these people that are testing, because these people are obviously getting sick and they're presenting things that look like viruses. When they were testing that, did they find any viruses or toxins in them?
I don't think they found viruses. But the main bacteria that they were able to find was the Enterobacter and the...
Okay, those were the two?
Yes, and the Pseudomonas. And neither one of those really cause sickness. Like, they are things that are naturally found in the soil and in humans. So they couldn't really find anything that pointed them as, oh, this must be what's causing the sickness. There was nothing in there that was obviously a problem.
Right. Or that they could technically test of back then.
And these blobs have never fallen over Oakville again. It was just those 6 times in August of 1994. And by the time they ran out of the samples that Sonny and Dottie had kept, other samples had been stolen, were missing, and all other samples they could possibly get had already disintegrated into the ground. The blobs didn't stick around for a very long time after they had fallen. So, what were the blobs? What could the blobs be? What are our theories? What are our thoughts? Are you ready for this discussion before we get into the angelic blobs?
Well, yeah, let's talk about what they possibly... I mean, there were a lot of theories running around during this time frame.
Oh, there were so many. I have 2... Oh, whoa. I don't know what my computer's doing. I've got 2 major theories that were like some of the biggest ones that government experts had.
We could just go back and forth and talk about them, because for people to understand, kind of like, not only was this happening in 1994, this is so 1993 is when... Oh my gosh, the TV show, Scully and Mulder, X-Files. X-Files came out in 1993. So by 1994 in August, the American psyche was already like back buzzing about UFOs from TV, and like there were some sightings between the 90s and 1995, this whole time frame. Not necessarily the specific area, but this area in its general location was well known for UFO sightings anyways.
Interesting. I didn't actually know that. Okay.
Huh? Well, yeah, because I know my UFO stuff.
I know my UFO. Come on now.
Yeah.
I know my alien stuff.
I know my alien stuff, okay?
Where's your tinfoil hat? Come on.
Yep.
Do it the program.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, there weren't any, like, I did look up if there were any specific correlations to this and a UFO and found nothing, but I do know there is a lot of activity in this in the Pacific Northwest, especially since it's kind of like on that same jet stream of Alaska and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the one of the big theories, so to speak, that the government gave, that the officials gave, that was not connected to aliens and stuff, they had figured out that the blobs appeared, based on these testings and stuff, that they appeared to be organic. The material appeared to be organic. The Department of Ecology reportedly considered whether the substance could be related to marine life. Oakville, like we talked about, is not far from the Pacific coastline, and prevailing weather systems can carry oceanic material inland. There is a phenomenon in which storms or aircraft disturb large groups of small marine organisms, such as jellyfish larvae or invertebrate eggs, which can then fall with precipitation. Some experts suggested that the blobs could be decomposed marine invertebrates or frog eggs disrupted by atmospheric conditions. However, witnesses described the material as lacking the typical structure of frog spawn. It did not contain visible embryos or dark centers, and it was just uniformly gelatinous. Which, I mean, uniformly gelatinous, could it be a jellyfish? Maybe, but I feel like it would have to be a very, very specific kind of jellyfish to be that clear or milky white only. And
you would think that they'd be able to tell the difference between a jellyfish.
Yep.
So, and I should have asked my husband this, are there things that could be mistaken as a leukocyte? Are there other types of organisms, or?
If you know what you're looking for, no. If that makes sense. So if you are a microbiologist who of course knows exactly what they're looking for, a leukocyte has a very distinctive shape and look to it, especially, for example, like when I look at urine sediments when I'm running a urinalysis at work, especially if I use a dye so that I can better see the different microscopic organisms within urine. The leukocytes are a good bit larger than some of the other cells that I could see under the microscope. They are almost blobs themselves, because if you think about it, they literally are meant to go and find foreign debris or the bacteria and just like swallow it and engulf it. That is a type of leukocyte. So I wouldn't think so. I think if it were just a regular, like a regular doctor or even the hazardous waste person, maybe, but like the microbiologist, they would know exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I just didn't know if there was like another type of like one-celled type object, because you said it didn't have a nuclei. So I was just wondering if there was something out there that didn't have.
That's why we need Captain Dylan, because I did think about looking it up. I just completely forgot before hopping on here to see.
Put your Google. Why don't you put your Google to work?
A Google machine right here. I can see if I can find any super fast.
So, well, while you're talking about that, so that's interesting when you're talking about the atmospheric, essentially the atmospheric sky jelly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, suggesting that there's this airborne like way to bring things, but I mean, there's also the theories that it can also bring algae, bacteria, protozoa through gelatinous masses as they precipitate. They call it star jelly, is what they call it.
Star jelly. Yes. I like that.
So it's kind of like almost like an aeroplankton. It's like an airborne plankton. But I don't know if I don't know if the airborne plankton is an organism that looks like a human cell at the same time.
No. Because I think like a human white blood cell versus a one-celled organism, the one-celled organisms look more, this is going to sound really weird, I'm going to try to make it make sense, but they look more 3D. They look more dense, if that makes sense. Bacteria is usually just significantly smaller than a leukocyte. But when it comes to plankton, I don't know, because I haven't seen that. I'm not a microbiologist. That is a good thing to bring up is the idea of that plankton. When I was telling you about with the red blood cells, like when someone has anemia, and one of the reasons why we can tell someone has anemia, or even an animal, is you look at a blood smear and some of the red blood cells won't have a nucleus because your bone marrow is trying to get make more blood faster than then your body is getting rid of it more or less. Like you're losing more blood than your body is able to make. Now, apparently, it is the same for leukocytes. If your body is losing more leukocytes than it can make, then you'll see a immature white blood cell, an immature leukocyte that does not have a nucleus, which again is interesting because that shouldn't be able to survive outside the body. And it's weird, really, really weird to see that outside the body. But there's that. I think your thoughts about the star jelly is very interesting.
Well, it may not have been in there, but there is something called star jelly that is an aeroplankton. So some people thought it was this. Maybe it was an underdeveloped version of it.
Kind of along the same line of the star jelly is, which I'm sure you probably heard this, aircraft dumping. But
that one was thrown out pretty quickly.
Well, because if there is any kind of like gelatinous substance that could have come out of the aircrafts, they usually don't do it while they're in flight. Plus, it's blue in color.
And it's frozen.
And
because of the altitude, it freezes. It would have been frozen.
Yeah. And not to mention the fact that officials from multiple different, like the military as well as the Federal Aviation Administration, stated that there was again, they can't dump while they're flying, and there wasn't any kind of tests or operations or anything going on over that airspace that could have accounted for that material. However, as we know, McDowell's supervisor told him do not ask whenever that blob went missing, which then makes us think, okay, well, the military can say all they want about there being no tests, but how many times has the government in the span of our history done tests on the public and continues to do tests on the public without saying anything, and later says, oh yeah, by the way, guess what we were doing this whole time?
Well, there are several military facilities near this area. So it's not unlikely for people to speculate that there was some kind of biological or chemical thing going on when they were testing and it went wrong. Not to mention they were testing new test airplanes, or aircraft, I should say is the better term. Aircraft were being tested. And so it's possible new aircraft testing also meant new air fuel. And there's a theory that could link that maybe this new fuel or whatever you're using to propel your new plane went wrong, and now this happened for 6 days.
The other thing going along with that is, of course, and this is McDowell's thoughts, he thought based on his tests and stuff and investigation of these blobs that they were some kind of biological material meant to transport something, similar to the things that they would make to transport different bacteria and viruses and stuff as they're doing their investigations and studies on them. So he thought more along the lines of, are we testing a biological weapon?
Or were we transporting an alien organism that needed to be kept alive?
Well, I mean, that's one too.
I mean, you think about it. You got to keep them in almost like that gelatinous type, watery
that
substance
matrix
that you see in movies. Very cinematic, Who's to say that a little bit of that didn't leak out?
And the government already stated that they know that UFOs are real. So,
right?
Who knows? It is on the table now. It is in the differentials. So we can't deny it.
Yep.
All right. So now that we've kind of gone through this and we've hit the halfway mark of this episode, do you want to tell me about the angelic blobs? Or do you have more to add to the goo of
most
Oakville?
Of them have been kind of essentially not corroborated because there's still too many questions. I mean, we're limited on the samples, questionable testing, we don't really know. And then illnesses and eyewitnesses, all these different things. It's like anything else, it's still a mystery. Nothing really wants to make perfect alignments for us to have a definitive answer. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to discuss a few ideas. Now, I thought, well, how cool would it be to look at some mythological and religious parallels of things that come from the sky. And the first thing that I thought was manna, which in the biblical Exodus 16 is described as this fine lake-like substance that appeared on the ground to feed the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But it was like white and it tasted like honey wafers and
honey wafers.
It could be baked or boiled. Right. It was kind of like something that they were given to survive on.
You know what that sounds? It sounds like the, I don't know why, but the first thing I thought of was like the MREs where you just like add some water and all of a sudden you have a whole meal just sitting there right in front of you.
Yes. Well, but that thought process, that kind of made me think of, like, the manna coming from the sky and them not knowing where it came from as maybe a natural phenomenon, perhaps, like, some kind of secretion from, like, insects or a type of, like, edible resin that is carried by the wind,
That's
essentially.
very interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though this may not have been edible, I just thought of the similarity and then the mysterious part as it coming from the sky in this, like, gelatinous form,
Yeah,
so
and have knowing not wow, I don't know what my brain just tried to do, but not having any idea what
right?
caused it and what it actually is.
Right. So star jelly, like just like we were talking in modern time star jelly, there's also kind of historical European lore about star jelly. And this comes from the astral jelly, a substance that was believed to fall from the sky after meteor showers. So
Oh.
right, but there weren't any significant meteor or astrological events happening in this time frame.
Yeah, that's what I saw or in my research. Meteorologists were reporting that they didn't know or hadn't seen or hadn't
Mhm.
documented anything happening in the atmosphere that would have explained the blobs.
Yeah, so the European lore of the astral jelly or star jelly, it was just something they thought was the remains of, like, shooting stars, like, "Oh, it's shooting star poop.
Oh, oh, the
Charlie, the magical unicorn."
Charlie, the star pooped on us.
I mean, but the thing is, it is also considered to be gelatinous, odorless, and quick to dissolve, so it has a little bit of a similarity.
That
Um
is so interesting. Well, I mean, what are the chances that something like that did happen? Because there is such a large difference between our technology nowadays and the technology even in the mid 1990s. There's such a huge difference. So that makes me think, okay, what are the possibilities that maybe there was something like that happened and they just weren't able to document it? They didn't report it because they just didn't have the technology to see it at the time. So this is literally star jelly or space goo.
mhm. Now, so in the Hindu and Vedic texts, the nectar of the gods, so soma is a ritual drink that grants immortality. So it wasn't described as gelatinous. However, we know there are things that are lost in translation.
Hmm.
It's very possible that this ritual drink can grant immortality, but it's something that is brought to earth by divine beings. It was interpreted to be um a plant or substance that descends from the heavens,
Okay.
but the concept is that it caused altered states like illness,
Oh.
and it parallels how mysterious skyborne materials can like be connected or like latched with sacred and transformative properties into a religious belief.
And
So
I
I thought it was kind of
also, yeah, I think that's interesting too. Is I actually find it interesting to take the perspective of they don't have the words at the time to describe what it is.
mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, because like they're not sitting there saying this gelatinous substance. They don't have those words back
Well,
then.
yeah, how they describe. I mean, Jello wasn't a thing.
Exactly.
Why would you
Exactly.
describe it as gelatinous?
When you don't even know that word hasn't even, you don't have the word for that. So some of those things that you tell me about, some of the beliefs and stuff, some of them I think would be very interesting to look into.
That's why it's always interesting to look at ancient depictions and stories when you see these things like the people that are the men carrying the strange purse throughout several cultures, the
Hmm.
UFO looking things, the astronaut looking creature or beings that are unseen. A lot of these things that aren't just in one drawing, they're in several different reliefs and pictograph or pictures and stuff throughout many cultures.
Hmm.
One is called Skyfall. This is a folklore that's kind of worldwide, and I think Aristotle even wrote about it. But this is
Okay.
basically like you had mentioned this earlier, where the frogs, the fish, and other little small animals,
Hmm.
essentially they rain from the heavens, like even like the biblical plagues.
Yeah, like
Okay.
there was a place, I think it was in the United States, where it rained frogs.
Hmm.
Frogs and
Yeah.
lizards and stuff.
Well, what happens is this is a mechanism known and understood like as like water spouts. So
Oh,
tornadoes
okay. Yeah.
lifting it and redepositing organisms. So when
Hmm.
when a weather front comes in, it will lift these small entities up into their atmospheric stuff and essentially just drop them back down in a new location.
Can you
So
imagine
that's
being
not
that
a
frog? Just like, woo!
yeah, that's not really a mystery anymore. That's just an atmospheric thing that happens.
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of just Mother Nature tossing them along the way. But I mean, the blobs could fit into this category as this unusual precipitation. It's moved some kind of like part of a microbial or something from some
Mhm.
strange substance and moved it to a new location. It was just happened to be in the weather.
You mentioned that there's a lot of military installations around this area. Who's to say that they weren't, conducting some kind of experiment on
Mhm.
something, and it wasn't, this blob. It was never meant to fall upon Oakville, but because the atmosphere had other plans, it did fall upon Oakville, and they were like, "Oh, well, I guess this answers our question to our studies."
Okay, so one other possible thing I wanted to my last one because this is the UFO thing. So
Yes.
what is it?
I said, "Yes, tell me the UFO thing."
Now in UFO lore, there's something called angel hair, not the pasta. Not the
pasta's
pasta.
so good though.
This is the antipasta. So the angel hair, like the pasta though, is very fine, but it's a silvery, like web-like substance that is supposedly falls from the sky during UFO sightings. And it's
Oh.
thought that it dissolves very quickly. But it's speculated that this is related to their spacecraft propulsion and their atmospheric energy because a lot of them pull water. UFOs been seen to
Oh,
pull water
yeah.
up. Right,
Yeah.
right. So if you're pulling up water, you may also be bringing in some type of um, creatures and like essentially if you're bringing water, you're going to bring some marine life up in there to
Bring up
your
anything
spacecraft.
else, yeah.
Right. It's very possible that a UFO brought water up with a bunch of like algae or something similar that looks like human leukocytes, but it's not. And then as that spacecraft is traveling and it's like propulsing itself over and like kind of doing its studies of that Pacific Northwest, drop some gelatinous material for 6 days.
It was like, "Oh, they're like, you can just drop it right here. There's no humans."
And they were on vacation, 6-day vacation. They're just
So, like,
trying
you
to chill in the
just
atmosphere.
drop it right here. There's no humans. They won't know anything. And then
Yes.
the atmosphere is just like, wee.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's definitely a different texture than angel hair. That just means it's a different or a newer model of a spaceship.
Exactly.
Like
They changed around.
just because your triangle spaceship typically gives this spiderweb like doesn't mean that my new proby like round one is not going to give you a different look of propulsion.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. My spaceship looks like a bunch of bubbles. What do you expect? I don't know.
Yes.
I can't help you with that.
You can't assume that every alien technology is from the same alien family.
Exactly. This is a different one.
Yeah, how do we know this is from a different constellation and they have a totally maybe they don't use all the different types of things.
Do you know how far they traveled to get here?
To get on their
They had
vacation?
to drop the blobs. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. All right. So anyways, I mean, it's one of those things I thought it'd be kind of cool to bring the theological thing with it because it's not unusual for you to read religious text and mythological text and find some kind of atmospheric phenomenon that
Things
the
are
gods
always
have
falling
done.
from the sky.
Right. These messages. Ooh, just put that in my mouth.
Just eating the microphone. It's
Pour
okay.
the microphone into my face.
Yeah, it's because we couldn't hear you well enough, so you decided to eat the microphone. Cool,
Exactly.
I gotcha.
Right. So the phenomenon, like that I was saying, is not. It's not that it's for them. It's seen as like these messages from the divine, where like the manna or the blood rain, or now we have blobs in Oakville. These are environmental and spiritual imbalances, according to a lot of theories. Something's happening. So I mean, I find it extremely interesting that how it fuels the scientific stuff, but we still with science can't solve the problem.
Well, because some of these things, like the other thing is too, I have a feeling that we could have at least discovered more about them if we still had the samples, because like I said, technology is so much different now than it was even in 1994. And the sickness, like when they looked at these blobs, as far as they could tell, there wasn't anything in there to make the people sick. So why did they get sick?
Well, okay, and that's the thing, and that's why I want to kind of sum this up real quickly. So if you think about the at face value. You've got the illness. You've got the stuff falling from the sky. So had these blobs fallen in the desert 3,000 years ago, this might have been entered into scripture.
Mm-hmm.
But since it was 1994 in the state of Washington, all that happened was it got entered into a police report and a lab analysis. And that's all the further it went.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting because we have people who believe in a religion. We have people that this didn't turn into a sign. Why did it switch? Why have we switched from now let's use science to figure out what this is and not say this was a message from gods, from the God or from gods?
Mm-hmm.
It has changed because perception.
That is interesting. I feel like people expect that science is going to give an answer, which I know is super silly, but it kind of makes me think a little bit about a sermon I heard recently about this. I was at church with my husband because I like to support him and, learn about his beliefs and his culture and everything. And the priest did a sermon about understanding that when you pray, you have to have patience for an answer, that you're usually not going to get an answer immediately. They're too impatient. So I wonder if that is why we've had this shift to, instead of letting something be unknown, they just want that answer. They want to know immediately.
Yeah. Well, and my thoughts are that science, I believe in science, but I also believe in a God. So for me, it's a total different mindset that science is catching up to what God has been trying to tell us that we don't have words.
Mm-hmm. And that was what I told you when I had that conversation with my dad, how he said that science is the pursuit of God.
Mm-hmm.
We will respect them all, respect all the beliefs. But I thought that was a very interesting thing. And I think this kind of ties into that, and that whole trying to understand this thing, trying to use science to explain this thing that we can't explain. We don't know what it is. We don't know why it fell. We don't know where it came from. And then we talk about all of these records from these different religions and these different ancient times of something similar happening. And so I think this was an interesting case to kind of bring that concept.
Except for a lot of times in religion, you find like the plagues that killed people or made people the different things that left markings on their bodies. But then you have the Israelites. They wake up, they see this flaky thing, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna eat it." And guess what? It sustained us for 40 years. Like, all right,
the Israelites were like, "That looks like food."
Chad, you go eat that and see if you die.
They're like looking over at the most curious people. They're like, "This is the person.
Who can we get rid of? Who's expendable?
Who's Who? If that person dies, we'll be okay. Yeah, have them eat the powder.
Get them eat the strange substance. All right. So now that we've talked about the orbs, thankfully,
we kind of got philosophical there too. This was a good discussion. Good
nice
one.
Job. Well done. Pat on the back.
All right. Oh.
Okay. Well, until next time, if you have any fun theories or thoughts you want to share with us, you can email us at info@theparallaxpodcast.com. You can follow us on social media, theparallaxpodcast.com. Go to the two little icons on our website, follow them, and you can, you can see us next week.
Yeah, that's exactly what you can do.
Yes. All right. Until then, I'm Karisa. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Willow. Goodbye, mortals.